Hello, welcome to the channel Why Stories. Enjoy watching.
Sergio, what do you say? Marco Delgado anxiously asked the doctor who came out of Liana's room. The girl's condition, I must say, is not very good. Has she been silent for long? A week. Since the day of her mother's funeral. She turned off her phone, doesn't touch the laptop, doesn't turn on the TV, and doesn't leave the room. She lies in bed all day and stares at the ceiling if she's not sleeping. What did she eat today? Nothing. She only drank some juice, and even that was just a little. Yesterday she had half a cup of broth, as told by Inés Toro, the housekeeper. She needs to eat properly. She refuses to, the father sighed heavily. She doesn't want to see me at all. She turns away and cries when I enter. The caregiver had to leave the same day I brought her. The same reaction as with me. Only Inés Toro allows entry. And she allowed you as well. Has she seen a psychiatrist? Was any prescription given? You know how things are with doctors here. I brought one from the regional capital yesterday, but she refused to speak to him. Nevertheless, he made a diagnosis based on my account and also examined her himself. He said she's suffering from depression after the experienced stress. I bought the prescribed pills the same day, but she refuses to take them. Maybe Inés Toro can persuade her somehow? Or, find a companion of her age to be with her. Not exactly a caregiver, but more like a companion. She doesn't need care as such, but someone she can trust. That might make her start talking. Does she have any friends? Perhaps she does. I don't know, Marco hesitated. We haven't been very close lately, especially when the arguments with her mother started. Find out from her class teacher at school. She should know who your daughter was friends with. Invite her friend to be a caregiver. They have all finished their exams, right? Liana's last exam was on the day her mother died. Marco's voice trembled, but he quickly regained his composure. Their graduation is coming up, but if I find a friend, I'll try to persuade her. I won't spare any money. If that doesn't help, then hospitalization will be necessary. Otherwise, you will lose her. Forgive me for being so direct. You mean a psychiatric hospital? Yes, until she turns 18, as a father, you have to decide this matter yourself. And then you will need her consent. When the doctor left, Marco sank heavily onto the couch in the living room. How exhausted he was. And what a long and incredibly difficult week it had been. 7 days ago, on his 40th birthday, Felisa, the mother of his daughter Liana, died. And it seems like it happened many years ago. It's as if he has lived another dreadful life without her. He met Felisa when he was nearly 40 himself. At the district festival, the harvest day, he couldn't take his eyes off the slender girl with long blonde curls and jeans and a t-shirt. She was wandering near the stage, taking photos of the harvest winners. That year, the agricultural enterprise led by Marco Delgado achieved a record harvest in the district. They even topped the charts in the region. Naturally, Marco was in the spotlight. He wanted to give the bouquet he received on stage, along with the certificate and red ribbon, to this girl with a camera. Although he could have taken it home to his wife Erna, he didn't think of her at that moment. He quickly found out that her name was Felisa, and she worked in the press office of the district administration. She accepted the bouquet with gratitude but was immediately called away and left. He spent the whole night thinking about her, tossing and turning beside his lawful wife. The next day, he went to the district center, entered her office, and offered to have coffee after work. It was a Friday, and Felisa agreed. Instead of a cafe, he took her to his friend's tourist resort, where they spent the entire weekend, after which he didn't want to part with her. He fell in love like a young boy. However, Marco had been married for a long time and had no plans to get divorced. Initially, Felisa wasn't bothered by this fact. She enjoyed their secret meetings and his expensive gifts. He rented an apartment for her, where he would come almost every evening. But he would go home, to his large house in the center of the village, just 5 kilometers away, at night. And when Felisa told him about her pregnancy, she brought up the topic of the need for a father for her future child. That's when they had a big fight, something that hadn't happened in the 6 months of their affair. So, I have nothing and will have nothing? No husband, no home, no money of my own? Why did I get involved with you? Felisa shouted. You knew I was married and that wouldn't change, Marco Delgado responded in a raised voice. I won't refuse to support you and our future child financially. You'll always have money, and we'll solve the housing issue, but I can't marry you. Felisa declared that she would terminate the pregnancy and leave for the regional capital so he could forget about her. Marco didn't want that at all. But then he left, slamming the door, and said before parting, Do as you please. He returned, indeed, quickly. Almost immediately. He begged for forgiveness, almost on his knees, promising to build for her and the baby, to help her organize her own business. Maybe even open a shop, so she would have a steady income besides what he provides. And then she agreed not to demand a divorce from him, to understand that he can't always be with her, even when she strongly desires it. But not on this last birthday of hers, which she didn't even plan to celebrate according to some traditions. Celebrating 40 years is considered bad luck. Felisa started demanding Marco's attention from the early morning. He came with a huge bouquet of 39 red roses and presented her with a box containing a diamond bracelet. She had previously mentioned that she dreams of having one. Let's spend the evening together, she pleaded. Liana is planning to stay overnight at her friend's after the exam, so we'll be alone. I don't need any other company. Felisa, I can't tonight, Marco began gently, realizing that he shouldn't tell her the true reason for his refusal. His legal wife is feeling unwell again, so he needs to be with her in the evening and at night. How about we go somewhere for the weekend? This he could promise since his son Diego will be coming from the city with his family, and they will be staying with their mother for 2 days. Delgado, do you understand that I gave you my whole life? All my best years are given to you. I didn't get married, even though I dreamed of wearing a white dress and a veil. I gave birth to your daughter. And now, at this critical moment, when I feel bad knowing that my life is passing by in loneliness, on my 40th birthday today, I ask you not to marry me, no. I don't even mention that anymore. Just to spend the evening together and maybe stay overnight. Am I asking for too much? Felisa shouted. I'll try, but I can't promise, he said on parting and kissed her on the cheek. If only he knew that this would be his last kiss. He took care of his wife, who suffered from headaches. They had occurred occasionally in certain days of her cycle before and sometimes lasted for several days. Sometimes painkillers would help, and sometimes nothing would. Now, in her long past childbearing age, Erna's migraines occurred less often, but, as she claimed, the pain was even stronger than in previous years. Taking foot baths slightly relieved her condition, but someone had to prepare them. Or brewing ginger tea, which also alleviated her condition. Marco, just then, was carrying a cup to his wife's bedside when Felisa called. He stepped out of the house to answer. And here I am celebrating my birthday without you, Marco Delgado flinched upon hearing Felisa's drunken voice. She allowed herself alcohol very rarely, knowing that in such a state she could do something foolish. Where are you? He asked anxiously. At the Mon Amour restaurant, and I'm having a great company here. Guys, say something to my man, drunken male voices were heard on the other end of the line. Are you going to pick me up from here, or should I go with one of these hot guys? Then I can't vouch for myself. I don't even know how all of this can end. Felisa giggled disgustingly. Stay there, Marco said sternly. I'll send my driver Carlos. No, you come or I'll drive myself. Felisa, stop it, wait for Carlos, and he hung up. And then he immediately called his driver. He trusted this 20-year-old guy. He wasn't talkative, so there was no need to worry that any of Marco's family or personal secrets, to which the driver involuntarily became privy, would become known to the villagers or the town's residents. Carlos could be called at any time of the day, and he was always ready to go in the required direction. Marco didn't skimp on rewards for his loyal assistant, and he had never let him down. But that evening Carlos couldn't pick up Felisa in time. She ended up driving herself and got into an accident. And it cost her life. Erna fell asleep after another dose of painkillers when the mobile phone put on silent vibration. Marco picked it up and the driver, struggling to find the right words, informed him of the tragedy. By morning, the news had spread throughout the district. Some sympathized with Marco, but most of the acquaintances and strangers considered him responsible for what had happened. Perhaps it was fair. But after experiencing the shock of Felisa's death and then her funeral, Marco's only concern now was to maintain his relationship with his daughter. However, she immediately learned about the circumstances of her mother's death and what preceded it. "How could you leave her alone?" Liana yelled at her father. "I would have stayed with Mom if she hadn't said you would be with her that evening. And, as always, you vanished. How much I hate you. I will never, ever forgive you." At the cemetery, when they lowered the coffin into the grave, the daughter lost consciousness. Liana spent 2 days in the hospital, hardly getting out of bed and not talking to anyone. After an examination, the doctors declared that her physical condition was normal, but her mental or psychological state was not their specialty. And now, in Sergio's opinion, Liana is at risk of being sent to a psychiatric hospital. That would be going too far. Marco was willing to take any advice to help his daughter recover, so he went to the school where Liana studied. Marco found the homeroom teacher in the staff room. A middle-aged woman with a voluptuous figure was sitting at a desk, writing something. She was alone in the room. "Are you Barbara Sanz?" he asked just in case, although the security guard, when recording his passport details in some kind of journal, said that there was no one else in the staff room at the moment. Yes, she put aside her notes and stood up from the desk. "Are you Liana's dad?" "How did you know?" Marco was surprised, as he had never met this teacher before. He had never even been to his daughter's school. "You are a well-known figure, the manager of one of the best agricultural enterprises in the district. Your photo often appears on the pages of the local newspaper," she explained. "Please accept my condolences. How is Liana?" "Thank you. Liana is deeply affected by her mother's death. You know, the doctor advised us to invite one of her classmates as a companion. I wanted to find out who she was friends with. Unfortunately, I have no idea. Does she need care? A teenager is hardly capable of handling that. No, she needs a company, someone her age whom she knows well. Someone she can freely talk to if she wants. Can you recommend someone? I am willing to pay for this service. Alex, perhaps, would be suitable. They have been friends with Liana for a long time. Besides, the money would be helpful for Alex and sister. They were orphaned 2 years ago. Where can I find Alex?" Sonora Sanz walked up to the window. "Look, there in the courtyard, a group of kids." Marco looked out the window where the young people were standing, engaged in a lively discussion. Alex is in a black t-shirt and pants, dark shoulder-length hair. "What's with this fashion?" Marco involuntarily protested. "They all look the same, all in these long robes. They're all in pants, you can't tell boys from girls." "Yes, you're right," the teacher smiled. "Oversized and unisex." "What? Sorry. Clothing of undefined size that can be worn by anyone, regardless of gender." "That's exactly it. And can Alex be trusted, at least?" "Yes, of course. They both are very responsible, their parents raised them well. They get straight A's, just like your Liana." "That's good." "Well, they're dispersing now," Marco said disappointedly. "I'll give you Alex's phone number." Sonora Sanz wrote down the number from her mobile phone and handed the slip of paper to Marco. "Tell Liana that we all love her very much and will be happy to see her at the graduation ceremony. She won't be able to attend the prom, I assume? It's possible that I'll have to pick up her diploma as well. Please call me when it's ready. He handed the teacher his business card. He returned to the house he had built for the late Felisa, hoping to hear from Ines that his daughter was doing better. But the faithful assistant only frowned. All the same, doesn't say a word. And no matter what I suggest to her, she turns away from everything. I decided to invite a caregiver from Liana's peers, the doctor advised it. I'll call now and make arrangements. Will this caregiver be able to stay overnight? Because, with all due respect, Marco, I have my own family. Even your increased payment won't help me here. I love Liana very much, as you know, but I can't live here permanently. I'll find out everything now. Ines' words saddened him. For the past 2 nights, she had stayed with Liana in the empty house, while he slept in Felisa's bedroom 3 times after bringing Liana back from the hospital. The invited caregiver was rejected by their daughter. Liana turned away as soon as the caregiver entered, so Marco didn't risk leaving her alone overnight. He had to decline her services altogether. But he couldn't stay with Liana any longer himself, nor could he bring her to his large house in the village where he lived with his lawful wife. He dialed the number written on the teacher's note, but heard an answering machine. He left a voicemail in which he outlined Alex's proposition. The response he received was in the form of a text message, with just one word "good" following the customary greeting of a good day. I've arranged for a caregiver, Marco informed Ines. Alex, Liana's classmate, will come to her. Will Alex stay overnight? The woman asked, surprised. Yes, I received consent. Is something wrong? No, you know best. I'll finish dinner now and go home. I've already done the cleaning. Will you wait for Alex yourself? I wanted to ask you, I need to leave urgently, I have many things to attend to. Well, all right, Ines sighed. I'll stay a little longer. I'm very grateful to you. This is a reward for the extra trouble. He handed her an envelope. Thank you, the woman put it in her apron pocket. Before leaving, Marco cautiously looked into Liana's room. She lay there with her eyes closed, covered with a thin blanket. It pained him to see his daughter fading away before his eyes. She used to be such a cheerful girl, and he loved her bright laughter. Perhaps, deep down, the interaction with Alex would be beneficial for her. Marco let out a heavy sigh and walked towards the exit. The following days he was unable to visit his daughter, but he stayed in constant contact with Ines. And he was pleased to note that the doctor's advice was yielding good results. Liana was taking the prescribed medication from the psychiatrist and finally started eating properly. Today she even ate soup, reported Ines Toro. You know, I was surprised when you invited Alex as a caregiver. But it truly made a significant difference for Liana. She hasn't been talking to me yet, but I've heard her voice. It seems she's opening up to Alex. Thank you for the good news, Marco smiled for the first time since Felisa's death. I'll come tomorrow morning. On that day, everything seemed to magically fall into place. There was hope that things would start to improve, his daughter would recover and forgive him. He arrived early the next morning before Ines did. The house was very quiet. Marco cautiously approached his daughter's room, opened the door, and was taken aback by what he saw. It was something he certainly hadn't expected. Ines had mentioned on the phone that Alex and Liana seemed to be sleeping together since the guest room bed was always perfectly made. Marco had dismissed any concerns about it. How wrong he was. Now he understood Ines' doubts about Alex spending the nights. The father was convinced that he had invited his daughter's friend as a caregiver, but it turned out that Alex was something more. Alex was a boyfriend, not a girlfriend. Now he saw it with his own eyes. Liana was sleeping in the embrace of a young man, both of them completely naked. Marco took a blanket and covered his daughter's exposed body. Get out, he hissed when he saw the boy open his eyes. Marco immediately left the room. He paced nervously in the corridor. God, what a fool, Marco thought to himself. I let a wolf into the sheepfold. Instead of hiring a caregiver, he invited his underage daughter's lover. A minute later, Alex emerged from Liana's room. He was wearing the same loose-fitting shirt and pants as when Marco had seen him from the school window. Now he didn't appear so much like a girl, despite his shoulder-length hair. You little scoundrel. How could you take advantage of my daughter's vulnerable state? Marco grabbed the boy by the shoulders, consumed by righteous anger. But he whispered his words so as not to wake Liana. I hired you as a caregiver, and this is what you're doing. We love each other, the boy calmly said. For a long time. Liana's mother didn't object to our meetings. She knew you were sleeping together? Marco gasped in disbelief. He had never expected this from Felisa. No, none of that happened back then. But our feelings would inevitably lead to intimacy, and it clearly helped Liana cope with the stress. Hormonal changes occurred. Shut up. The enraged father couldn't bear to hear it. Who do you think you are? You've come up with a nice excuse for yourself, you despicable minor. Liana and I are planning to get married. There was no hint of fear in Alex's voice when faced with the angry father of the girl he was caught in bed with. So, your insults mean nothing. Who would allow you to marry my daughter, you piece of shit? Marco hissed, pressing the boy against the wall. It's not up to you to decide, but up to Liana. She turns 18 next month. I know perfectly well when my daughter's birthday is. Marco released his grip on the boy's shoulders, reached into his pocket, and took out several bills. He handed them to Alex and barked. Get out of here and don't come near my daughter again. The boy calmly put on his sneakers, walked out of the house, and carefully closed the front door. Marco trembled with anger. Alex, where are you? He heard his daughter's voice, and his heart skipped a beat. He rushed to her bedroom. Liana stood by the bed, tying the belt of her short robe. How much she resembled her mother, the same slender figure, the same light, long curls. Hello, my dear, he wanted to approach and kiss her on the cheek, but his daughter quickly moved away. What are you doing here? She asked, indignant. Where's Alex? It's good to hear your voice, Marco smiled. And Alex left. You chased him away? She looked directly into her father's eyes, and he couldn't withstand that gaze. First, you invite him, and now you chase him away? She shouted with undisguised anger. I invited him to talk with you or read you books, but certainly not to sleep in the same bed. A wave of anger surged through Marco with renewed force. I never approved of such debauchery. Now he raised his voice as well. Who asked you about it? Liana's eyes flashed with anger. It's my business only. And who are you to lecture me? Living a double life for so many years. How could Mom ever reach you? I don't want to see you, leave. Her voice trembled. She quickly entered the bathroom and closed the door. Marco stood in the middle of his daughter's room, bewildered. And then his mobile phone rang, but he didn't want to answer. He needed some time to gather his thoughts and talk to his daughter, but the phone wouldn't stop ringing. Yes. He barked into the receiver without even checking who was persistently calling. Marco, we have problems in the garage, he heard the anxious voice of the chief engineer of the agricultural enterprise. Well, deal with it. I'm afraid we can't handle it without you. There's been an accident. What the hell is going on? Marco cursed. I'll be there shortly. As he was leaving the house, he ran into Ines. Watch over Liana, he requested. I'll call you later. He turned around at the gate. Did you know that Alex is a boy? He asked, annoyed. Yes, the woman answered, surprised. Marco cursed again and quickly headed towards his car. Along the way, his mobile phone kept ringing incessantly. In addition to the problems in the garage, where one of the mechanics was crushed by a truck, he was informed that a regional inspection had arrived at the farm. They claimed that several cows were infected, which could lead to quarantine. The chief agronomist said that rain was forecasted, possibly with hail, and they hadn't finished harvesting the grain yet. There was also a call from the processing plant. The sanitary inspection found quality discrepancies in the sausage that had already been released for sale. What about you? Marco barked, pressing the button on his phone when his son's number appeared on the screen. Are you going to take Mom to the hospital as you promised, or should I do it? You do it. Marco pressed the end call button, already approaching the central estate of his farm. For several hours, he diligently tackled the overwhelming production problems. Why did he always end up shouldering such a burden of tasks? There were deputies for that. They needed to hold a meeting and redistribute responsibilities. Although, who besides himself could handle all this so quickly? His son was already 35, and he was still contemplating whether to entrust him with more than he already had or wait a bit longer. The young man had been eager for action since graduating from the Agricultural Institute, yet he had become accustomed to lurking in the shadows of his father. Marco himself was to blame for not supporting Diego's initiative in time. But it wasn't too late now. He needed to talk to him. He was just about to call his son when a lively ringtone signaled an incoming call. Toro, what happened? In the midst of this chaos, Marco even managed to forget about the morning incident, about Alex, whom he caught in bed with his daughter, and about the argument with Liana. Although it should be noted that she clearly improved. I don't even know how to tell you, Ines began. Just tell me as it is. Marco snapped. He couldn't stand it when someone stammered while answering his questions. Liana has left. Where did she go? What the hell? Can't they just say what happened right away? Why does he have to drag the information out of them? I don't know, but she seems to have taken some things with her. And her laptop is also missing. When? I don't know. I just noticed it myself and called you immediately. I'll be there soon, I'll figure it out myself, he hung up. This is the last thing I needed. She was recently lying in bed, fading before my eyes, and now, it turns out, she ran away from home? What the hell is going on? Is it all because I drove away Alex, or are there other reasons? Marco racked his brain. He gave instructions to his deputies and key specialists, quickly got into the car, and rushed to the city, trying to reach his daughter and her friend. But neither of them answered his calls. Then, a text message arrived from the bank about a withdrawal of funds from his credit card, which had been with Felisa for more than a year just in case. 10,000. It seemed that his daughter had gone far. He didn't mind the money if it was for a good cause. Marco was willing to give his daughter $1 million or even more. But what foolish ideas would she come up with out of hurt and anger? And in the company of that Alex. In Felisa's house, Ines pointed to the empty shelves in the closet. Marco inspected his daughter's room in search of any note, but found nothing. Then he rushed to the school to find out Alex's address. Maybe Liana was with him now? But Marco no longer doubted that his daughter was planning to leave, otherwise, why would she need so much money? He only hoped to find her before she left. He wanted to talk to her. Try to mend their relationship somehow, so that his daughter wouldn't break his heart in anger. Although he had no idea what he would say to her now. He just wanted to know where she was, see her, and then figure things out. At the school, he ran into his friend, a doctor, who had suggested inviting one of their classmates as a caregiver. How's Liana? Sergio asked anxiously. I followed your advice. Marco replied angrily. It seems she ran away with the caregiver. Oh, really? The doctor smiled for some reason. That means she's feeling better. That's good, Marco. Girls go out and come back. The caregiver turned out to be a boy. Well. Sergio couldn't help but laugh, but he quickly stopped himself. How did you manage that? I'm not finding it funny at all. I messed up, of course. I didn't check properly. I got caught up with work, and this morning I caught them in bed. So you couldn't tell that the person was a boy? Was he wearing a dress or something? No, of course not. Marco was getting more and more irritated by this conversation. But they all look the same now. You can't tell if it's a girl or a boy. And I didn't see him up close until this morning. I understand, I'm sorry, the doctor replied more seriously. But try to look at the situation from a positive perspective. After all, this step helped Liana overcome her crisis. Only now, I hope she doesn't end up in another crisis. Marco waved his hand, about to leave, but then stopped. Please, don't tell anyone that my daughter has left home. The town is small, and the neighborhood is not that big. Once they get a reason, everyone will gossip. And you know how much they already say about us. You don't have to worry about that. I'll consider it part of doctor-patient confidentiality. Like a cat on hot bricks, Marco thought when he saw Barbara Sanz, Liana's teacher, as soon as he said goodbye to the doctor. She noticed him too and walked towards him, smiling. Liana came today and picked up her certificate. She said, "I'm glad she's doing better." Alex was with her. It's amazing what school friendship can do. Tell me about it. Marco made a great effort to hold back and not say anything unnecessary about the true nature of the friendship between Alex and his daughter. Can you tell me where this Alex lives? Yes, of course. She gave him the address. He's my neighbor. He decided to show solidarity with his friend and picked up his certificate today too. He refused to attend the graduation ceremony and the farewell party. Such friends are worth their weight in gold. And I suppose you want to see them off? Yes. Where are they going? Marco hoped he could find out everything from Barbara. Well, they are leaving for college today, she replied, somewhat perplexed. Yes, of course. But where to? The anxious father asked too persistently. Don't you know? The teacher was surprised. They didn't tell me anything specific, just that they are leaving today. Did they say how they are leaving, at least? No, the smile disappeared completely from Barbara Sanz's face. Is something wrong with you and Liana? Oh, no. Everything is fine, Marco confidently stated, trying to calm himself internally. She just didn't tell me anything specific this morning, and then I had so much to do, got caught up. But now I'll ask her myself. He said his goodbyes and quickly walked towards his car. Excuse me, you're going to Alex's, right? Can you give me a ride? The teacher called after him. We're neighbors, after all. Well, yes. Of course, Marco opened the car door, inviting her to get in, although he felt that having such a passenger was quite inconvenient right now. Alex is planning to study programming, and as you know, Liana wants to be a designer, unless their plans have changed, of course. Barbara, trying to keep the conversation going, turned out to be quite helpful. So Marco was pleased that she had asked to accompany him. Previously, they mentioned either going to the capital or the regional capital. That's why I don't know what they decided, the sorrowful father, who was completely unaware of his daughter's plans, especially after the morning argument with her, tried to justify himself somehow. A few days before her death, Felisa mentioned something about Liana's upcoming studies. But he had ignored it at the time, too preoccupied with work. He only asked, "How much money do you need?" Since Felisa had planned to go wherever Liana decided to study. If they are going to the capital, then they should have already bought the tickets, Barbara speculated. Then they must have bought them already. Nowadays, everything can be done quickly online, Marco tried to sound calmer. The teacher guided him on the best way to enter the courtyard of the old 5-story building. Alex lives in apartment 22, on the 5th floor, Barbara informed him near the entrance. I live on the 1st floor, but I can accompany you. Who are you going to? An inquisitive grandmother, who was coming out onto the street, asked. Marco had to step aside to make way for her. To Alex, the teacher replied. Well, he left with his girl about 15 minutes ago in a taxi. I think he told the driver to take them to the station. Which station, the train station or the bus station? Marco asked, preparing to chase after them. How would I know? I'm just telling you what I overheard. Call Liana, Barbara suggested. My phone battery died, Marco lied, realizing that his daughter wouldn't answer if she saw his call. Out of network coverage, the teacher disappointedly reported, pressing the end call button. Let's check with Alex's sister, she probably knows. Well, she went to her aunt's in the village yesterday, the elderly neighbor lady revealed. What happened? Everything's fine, Sonora. Father and daughter had a misunderstanding. Barbara embraced the grandmother by the shoulders. He wanted to see them off. Marco quickly thanked them for their help and got behind the wheel to waste no more time. He decided to trust fate and first headed to the train station, hoping that the fugitives had gone there. The platform was empty, with only a janitor clearing the trash bin. Marco approached him with his questions. The janitor said that the train to the capital had left 5 minutes ago, and the commuter train to the regional capital had left even earlier. Marco found a photo of his daughter on his mobile phone and showed it to the elderly man. I can't say for sure, but it looked like a similar girl got on the train with the guy. Or maybe it was the commuter train. Just as Marco was about to put away his mobile phone, it rang. The screen displayed son. Dad, Mom isn't feeling well. Are you coming soon? I should pick up the kids from my mother-in-law soon. Yes, Diego, I'll be there in half an hour. It took Marco 2 days to catch Alex's sister at home. He learned that her name was Ariel. You shouldn't doubt Alex, the girl confidently stated when Marco asked her to tell him where her brother and Liana had gone, expressing his concerns that they might be in trouble. He would never harm your daughter. He may still look like a teenager, thin and frail, but he's strong in spirit. Our father has been gone for a long time, but my brother grew up to be a real man. After our mother's death, he helped me cope with the grief, even though I'm 2 years older and had just turned 18 at the time. I became his legal guardian, but in reality, he started taking care of me. And your Liana has been a great support to us. Her mother, Felisa, helped us until the very end. Did Liana stay overnight at your place? Marco became cautious. Yes, she stayed sometimes with Felisa's permission. And Felisa allowed such debauchery? What are you talking about? Ariel was indignant. When Liana stayed with us, she slept in my room, and Alex slept on the couch in the living room. And now they are sleeping together. Well, that was bound to happen sooner or later. They love each other, they plan to get married in the future and spend their lives together. But how will they support themselves? Do you know that Liana took money from my credit card? Yes, but Alex didn't approve of her actions. He has already started earning money on his own. He writes simple programs for small businesses and has been making websites for a while. So he already has his own income. And now he will enter university, study, and progress even faster. And Liana plans to take online orders for designing advertisements. They are both talented and resourceful, good kids, they won't fail. I need to find my daughter. Marco snapped, getting more and more irritated with each passing minute. Why? Liana has only just started to recover from Felisa's death. You'll only make things worse for her. That's why I won't tell you where they went. Besides, I promised them. Just know that she's fine. Alex will take care of her. Do you even hear yourself? You, poor orphans, latched onto a rich girl. Felisa helped you. Are you even aware of where she got her money from? Do you think her business fell from the sky? Consider that it was me who was helping you without even realizing it. But I want to put an end to it. I will find my daughter without your help. I think it's time for you to leave, Ariel stated sharply. I'm not going to listen to your insults and accusations. Your own daughter took money from your credit card, and you're still responsible for supporting her, even if she doesn't want to see you. And don't you dare blame me or my brother, he's an honest person, unlike you. It's you who had an affair with a mistress while you having a wife, and she gave birth to your daughter. But Alex would never do such a thing, I'm sure of it. With anger, Marco slammed the door of his car. He had hoped to learn something about his daughter from Alex's sister, but now that hope had vanished into thin air. The conversation with Ariel had honestly infuriated him, but also reminded him that he should find out what was happening with Felisa's stores. From the very beginning, she had hired a manager who handled all the issues, and the profits went into the bank account. Liana would inherit it, and she would have access to that account. And she would transfer ownership of the house to herself. He was at ease with that thought, but what was happening there right now? He called the manager, who assured him that everything was fine. In fact, he had said the same thing at the funeral. So at least one headache was alleviated, and he didn't need to worry about it for now. But as for Liana, Marco's greatest fear was that his daughter would become addicted to some illicit substances. He had seen what happened to the son of the manager of one of his dairy farms when he went to study in the regional center and started using various drugs. The boy's appearance had made an indelible impression on Marco, and the boy's father had said that young people often spend their free money on that trash when they are in a bad mood. What if Liana wanted to experience that kind of pleasure too? Then he remembered that Alex's sister had said something like, "My brother is an honest person." But what if she didn't know him well? After all, Liana and Alex now had money, the money she had withdrawn from the credit card. Oh, how he wished to banish such thoughts, but they stubbornly invaded Marco's mind. And he became even more determined to find his daughter as soon as possible. "Sergio, do you remember that you mentioned a guy working at your hospital, a computer genius who deals with the internet and other software?" Marco called his doctor friend, not for medical help, of course. "Yes, Anton Hernandez, a clever guy." "Why do you ask?" "Well, maybe he can find out something through the internet, where my daughter might be. I have no idea how he could do that. But come over. I'll introduce you to him, and then you can find out everything from him yourself. Still, don't expect too much, he's not a wizard." Marco explained his problem to the slightly nerdy guy in a rather confused manner, essentially stating that his daughter had left with a guy in an unknown direction, and as her father, he wanted to find her before she did something foolish. "Is there any social media where she can be found? Maybe you can hack her page and check her messages?" Marco looked at the young man hopefully. "I won't hack someone's page, let alone read their messages," Anton firmly stated. He didn't even raise an eyebrow when Marco placed a large sum of money on his keyboard. "Here's what I can try. You said they were planning to apply to the capital or the regional capital. Then they will be listed as applicants in the universities where they submit their documents. By the way, they can apply to multiple universities. So, they could be listed in the universities of both cities. We will know for sure where they got accepted in early August, but I can start searching now. Then I'll just have to keep track of the admission lists. It's meticulous work, thanks for the fee," and the young man pocketed the money. Marco had no choice but to agree to at least this much help. He didn't have high hopes that Anton would quickly find any trace of his daughter or the detestable Alex. But a couple of days later, Marco received a voice message from him. "Found Alex in the list of applicants at the regional university. He has a good chance of getting in based on his test scores, especially since he qualifies for the quota for orphans. Liana Delgado hasn't been found in any of the lists yet. And I haven't monitored the universities in the capital either. As I told you, they could have applied to multiple institutions." Marco had a restless night's sleep, and this news from Anton gave him a little boost. He could reach the regional capital by car in a couple of hours, but where would he start looking for his daughter there? It was like finding a needle in a haystack. Perhaps she and Alex rented an apartment, but in which district of the city? He had to be patient and wait for the final admission lists, and then rush to the university on the first day of classes. He just hoped that nothing would happen to Liana during this time. Somehow, he felt that if they maintained communication, it would protect his daughter from troubles and misfortunes. That she would be safer if he himself knew where she was and what was happening with her. Marco's daily affairs, which he used to immerse himself in wholeheartedly, now seemed to fade into the background. He delegated most of the tasks to his deputies, and his son Diego became more involved in the affairs of the enterprise that he would inherit when Marco retired. Once upon a time, at almost the same age, Marco himself took over this business. The reins of power were passed to him by his father-in-law, Ernest's father, Abelardo Flores, when he went on a well-deserved retirement. He became a father figure to Marco, whom he couldn't remember his own father. He passed away early in his life. And the young man could have taken a wrong path if the chairman of the collective farm hadn't taken him under his wing in time. He not only provided him with work during the summer holidays, but also invited him over for visits. That's where the friendship with his daughter Erna started. Although they were in the same class, they didn't interact much before. But starting from this summer after the 8th grade, they began to spend a lot of time together. Erna didn't possess any outstanding appearance. She was slim, clumsy, with small eyes and a sharp nose. But Marco liked her kind nature and easygoing character, and she was a good homemaker. She assisted her mother in everything, in the kitchen, in the garden, and with the domestic animals. Marrying Erna is like winning the lottery, Marco's mother said. She may not be beautiful, but she is reliable. And her father will help you to become the future chairman of the collective farm. Look how he promotes you everywhere. He's probably preparing you to be his son-in-law. By the age of 20, Erna had blossomed. She acquired a more feminine figure and started using various feminine tricks. She applied makeup to her eyes and curled her hair. But Marco didn't feel love, only respect for Erna, and more so for her father. He only decided to propose when Abelardo Flores didn't just hint, but said directly, "Why are you tormenting the girl? Look how close you are. It's time to get married." By that time, Marco had completed an agricultural technical school and served in the army. Both he and Erna studied to become accountants. She seemed to be deeply in love with Marco. That's what the whole village couldn't stop gossiping about. In short, everything had already been decided for him. He just had to take the final step. So he got married, and after 10 years, he took over the collective farm from his father-in-law, once he had obtained a higher education in economics. Marco himself dealt with the land shares when the time came. He transformed the farm into a closed joint stock company, essentially making it his own private enterprise. But the people didn't complain. They preferred a homegrown owner to outsiders. And they didn't envy Marco's millions, understanding the tremendous responsibility he carried. The wages at the enterprise became the highest in the region, and everyone aspired to work for him. And they all knew that he valued hard-working people. Marco was forever grateful to Flores. And when Flores asked him to make a promise before his death, he readily agreed. Although he didn't know what he would hear from his father-in-law. "Promise me that you will never abandon Erna," Abelardo Flores demanded. "I know that there may be other women in your life. You are an influential man. But I can't forbid it, and I can understand. One thing is to have affairs on the side, and another is to destroy your family. So promise me that you will never allow that. Otherwise, I will haunt you even from the afterlife." Marco made the promise and kept his word. There were occasional flings, but never in their hometown, only in the district town. The rumors probably reached his wife, but Erna never reproached him for anything, no matter what she might have heard. 5 years after the death of his father-in-law, Marco met Felisa and truly fell in love for the first time in his life. He knew that their relationship wouldn't go unnoticed by people, but he couldn't do anything about it. From the very first day when he gave Felisa a bouquet at the harvest festival, Erna must have been informed about it. But she didn't show any sign. As always, she was friendly and affectionate with her husband. This continued for years, until Felisa's death, not a single word of reproach. Marco felt like he was entering a different reality when he came home. To Erna, he was always a faithful and reliable husband, or at least that's how she acted. He couldn't fathom how she managed it. But their son sometimes looked at him with a suspicious gaze. Although it could be because he was already tired of occupying one of the deputy positions and dreamed of hitting the enterprise. Until yesterday, Marco believed that Diego wasn't ready yet. But now he felt an infinite fatigue. Perhaps he would be relieved to be free from the burden of responsibility for the enterprise. His main concern after that fateful morning was finding his daughter. Everything else faded into the background. He had to find Liana, and he would figure out how to mend their relationship later. Sitting in his office chair, Marco closed his eyes. He instructed his secretary not to let anyone in. He yearned for a few moments of peace and rest. But thoughts continued to disturb his relaxation. Then the phone rang. Marco felt delighted. It was Anton calling. Could there be news about Liana? Here's the thing, the young man hesitated, but then continued, I'm going to forward you the news from the regional capital. It's from the incident report that I found on the internet. The website is unofficial, but I decided to look through everything I could find. And there, I stumbled upon this. Well, take a look for yourself. Within a few seconds, the young man sent Marco a video file. Marco put on his glasses and clicked play. A girl against the backdrop of the cityscape was speaking into a microphone. Today, near the main building of the regional university, there was a traffic accident that nearly cost the life of Liana Delgado, a prospective student of this university. She was crossing the pedestrian crosswalk when she was hit by a black SUV, and the driver fled the scene. The police are currently searching for the driver, and the victim, in critical condition, has been taken to the regional hospital. Doctors are fighting for her life. Marco dropped the phone. It happened, what he had feared, his daughter was in critical condition. He felt a strong heat in his chest, struggling to breathe. He tore open the collar of his shirt, and the buttons flew off in all directions. Adela! He shouted with all his strength to his secretary. When the young woman opened the door, Marco was already lying on the floor, his chair overturned in the fall. Sergio was convinced that there was no worse fate than delivering bad news. How many times had he had to inform relatives about the death of their loved ones? Such is the fate of a doctor who cannot always save a person's life. But this time he had a different task, and he didn't know if he could handle it, to rectify a mistake in which he indirectly blamed himself. He took a deep breath and exhaled slowly, then decisively pressed the intercom button next to apartment number 5. Are you Alex? He asked the slender boy who opened the door. Yes, who are you? I'm Dr. Sergio Romero. I'm here for Liana Delgado, please call her. If you're from her father, she won't talk to you, the young man declared firmly. Just call her, and she can decide for herself whether she wants to talk to me or not, Sergio insisted. Alex left and invited him to come in after a minute. The doctor curiously looked around the small room, seemingly the only one in the apartment where the boy led him. Alex left, and Sergio remained alone, sitting on a comfortable sofa. I wonder how the millionaire's daughter, who is accustomed to domestic comfort, lives here, he thought. Well, I must admit it's quite cozy, and the renovation is fairly recent. Liana entered with a cup of coffee and placed it on the table next to the doctor. This is for you, she nodded towards the cup. Tell me, Sergio, what do you want? He thanked her and took a sip. I brought your passport. How did you get it? Liana was surprised. I thought I had lost it. You left it at the university when you submitted your documents. The girl from the admissions office happened to be an acquaintance of yours, and she took your passport to give it back to you. Cornelia Pena, she's from our town. We went to the same school, and now she's in her 3rd year. Why did she give my passport to you? She rents a room next to ours. She could have given it to me herself. Did they tell you that you resemble each other? Yes, back in school, we were sometimes jokingly called sisters. But what does that have to do with anything? She was hit by a car while crossing the road near the university. Your passport was in her bag. The police assumed that she was you. And one blogger even managed to post on the internet that Liana Delgado was involved in an accident and is hospitalized in critical condition. Is Cornelia okay? What happened to her? Fortunately, her condition is not as serious as claimed by that blogger who probably isn't accustomed to fact-checking, Sergio grimaced. She has a concussion and a non-displaced fracture of the radius. Also multiple bruises and abrasions. But there is no life-threatening danger, she will recover soon. Thank God. Liana breathed a sigh of relief. I need to visit her. But that's not all the news. Sergio took a final sip of coffee and placed the cup down. Your father. I don't want to hear anything about him. Liana interrupted the doctor. He saw the video on the internet. Sergio continued as if not noticing Liana's response, the one posted by that blogger, where she claimed that you were the one hit by a car and taken to the hospital in critical condition. Your father had a heart attack. Sergio paused and looked at Liana. Her facial expression changed. A moment ago she was angered by the mention of her father, but now there was concern and even fear in her eyes. How is he now? She asked quietly. He wants to see you. Is he dying? Tears welled up in the girl's eyes. I believe that meeting you can improve his condition. He's begging to see you. Will you come with me? Yes. Liana, I won't let you go alone, Alex interjected, as he apparently overheard their conversation and promptly entered the room. Then get ready, let's not waste time. They arrived at the district hospital when it was already dark. They had been mostly silent during the drive, with Sergio occasionally glancing at the passengers in the rearview mirror. Liana and Alex clung to each other like two sparrows in the winter chill, despite the day being hot. I arranged with my colleagues to let us in the intensive care unit, Sergio informed, parking the car in the hospital parking lot. He was slightly concerned that Erna, Marco's wife, might be there. And his suspicions proved true. She was actually standing by the window in front of the ICU, wearing a white lab coat draped over her shoulders. Upon seeing Sergio with Liana and Alex, she discreetly turned away. The doctor sighed, not wanting to be involved in unpleasant conversations, especially before he fulfilled his mission. As soon as Marco regained some consciousness in the hospital, he immediately asked to find Dr. Sergio Romero. And when Sergio rushed over, his friend made a request. Find out how my daughter is, please. She was hit by a car. She's in critical condition at the regional hospital. Your computer genius sent me a video message about the accident. I just hope she's alive. When Sergio learned that there had been a mistake, he immediately called to reassure his friend his daughter was safe. But Marco posed a new request that puzzled him. Bring Liana to me, please. Come up with anything, just bring her. What if I don't make it? I don't want to die without asking for forgiveness from my daughter. And Sergio set off to find Liana. He obtained her address from Cornelia Pena, who was mistaken for Liana because of the passport found in her bag. In the hospital, the girl was able to identify herself. And Sergio had familiar colleagues there who allowed him to enter her room. Sergio was relieved when Liana agreed to go to her father as soon as she heard about his condition. But was she ready to meet his lawful wife, her stepmother? It was good that Erna herself didn't desire any interaction with her husband's illegitimate daughter. Their conversation could have taken an uncertain turn. Let it be for another time. Sergio Romero, only one visitor is allowed, the duty doctor warned. Alex, you'll have to wait. Sergio let Liana go ahead and followed her into the intensive care unit. The moment the girl saw her father lying on a hospital bed with an IV drip, she burst into tears, burying her face in Sergio's shoulder. Sweetheart, come to me, her father requested, breathing heavily. And she obediently approached, wiping her tears as Marco took her hand. Thank you for coming, my dear. Please forgive me for everything. I was so worried about you. I was deeply troubled because of my unworthy behavior. I'm to blame for being the father you ended up with. You have every right to be angry with me, but that's how life turned out. I visited you whenever I had the chance. I loved your mother so much. Will you forgive me someday? Of course, Dad, Liana said through tears, barely holding back her sobs. And please forgive me, I never wanted it to turn out like this. Oh, my dear, that's not true. Do you remember how I used to read you bedtime stories when you were just a little girl? Liana nodded. And how I loved picking out presents for you. I would ask the saleswomen what dolls little girls liked, and I bought all kinds of them, and you were happy with any of them. I loved your joyful laughter, your melodious voice. Every time you came, it felt like a celebration. I wanted to make your mother and you happy, but I couldn't. I wanted you to take your time with all these relationships with men, which is why I spoke so harshly to Alex. Dad, we love each other, and we're getting married a month after my birthday. I'll be 18 in a week. It's all settled. Liana, you're still so young, don't rush. But what am I saying? I understand that you're in a hurry to get married because you don't want to repeat your mother's fate. I love Alex, so I don't see the point in waiting for something or someone. And Mom told me that she didn't love anyone before you. You were her only love. Oh, Felisa. Marco fell silent, tears streaming from his eyes. Sergio, take the girl away, the duty doctor ordered. All this talking is jeopardizing the treatment. Doctor, I need to say a few words to one more person, Marco Delgado requested. Is Alex still here with you? He asked Liana. Yes, he's waiting at the entrance. Fine, the doctor gave in, seeing Marco's pleading gaze. But no more than a minute. Now Sergio would have to bring Alex. What about Liana, if Erna is still standing by the window? But fortunately, Marco's wife had already left. I just received forgiveness from my daughter, Marco began when Sergio brought the young man to his bedside. And I also said horrible things to you in our only meeting. I can understand your anger that morning. Let me finish, Alex, we have little time, Marco interrupted him. Once, my dying father-in-law made me promise not to leave his daughter. And I kept my word. Though nobody knows what it cost me. But you and Liana say you love each other. I have to believe you. I'm asking you to take care of my girl, to care for her as I did. You can always count on that, Alex confidently said. Then I have no objections to your marriage, be happy. He fell silent and immediately added, please pass my sincere apologies to your sister, Ariel. I am deeply ashamed. For years past. Sergio Romero entered the courtyard of Marco Delgado's house. In the gazebo adorned with roses, a table was set, and Erna was bustling at the open veranda near the stove. Her daughter-in-law and granddaughter were helping her. Diego, the son, stood by the grill, where steaks were sizzling. Do you need any help? Sergio cheerfully asked. Thanks, everything is almost ready, Erna replied. Everyone will come out of the house soon, and we can sit at the table. The family celebration in honor of the christening of Liana's daughter, hosted by the lady of the house, was insisted upon. Sergio always marveled at this woman's character, her ability to forgive and accept others. To be friendly and welcoming even to strangers. She had met Alex, now Liana's husband, and struck up a conversation with him while Liana herself accepted her father's apologies, back when it seemed like he could die at any moment. It might have seemed strange to some, but after a few minutes of conversation, Erna and Alex had made the most pleasant impressions on each other. They exchanged phone numbers afterward. Alex was greatly relieved to learn that Marco's wife no longer held any grudges against his fiancée. Moreover, she even found justification for Liana's late mother, claiming to understand her as a woman. According to Erna, it was impossible to resist Marco's charm. It was Erna who called Alex and invited him and Liana over when Marco was just discharged from the hospital. And that meeting marked the beginning of a strong family bond, completely unexpected for outsiders who never stopped gossiping about Marco's wife's eccentricity. But this family was used to people's judgment. Erna, in general, never paid attention to what people said, a very rare quality, especially for a woman living in a small village. Marco later confessed to Sergio that he saw his wife in a new light. You know, I now feel towards her such feelings that I never had in my youth. Marco opened up. Of course, it's not the passionate love that bound Felisa and me. It's something different, a calmer and more balanced feeling. But I can confidently say that in addition to respect and gratitude, I now also have love for Erna. Sergio was very pleased with these words, and even more so that Marco quickly recovered. He handed over the management of his agricultural enterprise to his son Diego, and he did not disappoint his father. Alex and Liana came out of the Delgado's house with their baby in their arms, accompanied by Ariel, Alex's sister, who became the godmother on that day. Marco gallantly opened the door for Alex and Sergio. She had arrived early to participate in the sacrament of baptism at the village church. She didn't wait for her husband to finish his shift at the hospital. "The steak is ready," announced Diego, unable to contain his smile as he looked at Liana, who was holding his niece and now also her goddaughter.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe.